This week on the podcast, we're going to have a guest with us. We're going to have Jim joining us here finally on the show. Great to have him here. And we're going to be talking about stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads right here on the podcast. This is Wisdom and Wealth, Financial Clarity for Families in Transition.
This is Donna and this is Jim, each with a family that had to begin again. As they've brought their worlds together, they've learned a lot about blending families and finances along the way. Now, they're here to help you take on this new chapter with clarity and confidence. This is Wisdom and Wealth, Financial Clarity for Families in Transition.
On this edition of the podcast, Donna is going to be talking with her husband, Jim, and myself. We're going to change it up a little bit from our normal format on the show. As a matter of fact, we're changing the entire show right now to a new style. We're going to be on YouTube as well as also on the audio platforms like, Spotify and Apple as always. But we're going to be having Jim join us from time to time and really kind of talking off the cuff about different topics and how it affects families, especially families going through life transitions and finding the clarity, the financial clarity, and maybe even some of the mental clarity that kind of comes along with, blending families together. So that's going to be the topic this week. Actually, it's going to be stay-at-home moms and what it looks like when you are blending families or going through transitions and adding a whole nother wrinkle into that. So I wish I could put a clip of the classic movie, Mr. Mom, with Michael Keaton in there. That'd be a great one to use in there. But for this week, we won't be able to do that. But Donna, what's going on? How are you? First of all, welcome.
Doing good. Thank you so much for hosting Jim and I on this new platform. I'm excited to invite Jim into our podcast world. I think he's really do just fine.
Me too, Jim. Welcome in. Nice to meet you, my friend. How are you?
Doing great. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm so happy to have Jim with us. It's going to be interesting. On the behind the scenes of this was like, we're going to bring Jim. We're going to get this. He was just telling me, he's like, I'm coming in as a carpenter standpoint. So it'll be cool to see his total, take, his riff on things as we talk about various topics along the way: investing, finance, retirement, transitioning families, whatever the case might be. So Donna, let's talk about being a stay-at-home mom. There's definitely advantages, disadvantages. So let's talk about some of the strategies that you guys have seen in your life, because you guys have gone through some things, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this is where this topic, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, and taking the role, both Jim and I in our first marriages took the role of stepping back to be caregivers for our kids. And so we know from the emotional side, how does it feel? From the financial side, how does it feel? And now years later, while I work with my families in transition and my blended families of all these years of experience too, I can actually put this layer of the financial clarity around it, not just the emotional feel of it. But Jim and I have talked about it many of times, right? About how did it feel and how did we, in both relationships, talk about finances with our spouses? And now that we're a blended family together, and Jim is the primary caregiver for the kids, and works for our company also. But yeah, he's the one that's taking care of all the schedules and picking kids up and getting them the driving lessons while I'm here at work. So it frees me up. And so it was really different when we blended families this way, because I'm hypersensitive. Would you say that, Jim?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little hypersensitive. I'm like, do you feel good about how it feels financially? Do you feel whole? And he's like, we're good. It's okay. But it's so important to me because I remember having the conversation with my late husband about retirement savings. I gave up my career to follow him abroad. And I was like, all right, but you're going to max out your 401k because now I don't have access to save to annual contributions in my 401k. I just have my solo or my Roth as the spouse. And he's like, yep, we'll do it. And he did. And the one thing I never did was check the statement to see how he was invested. Back in 2008 and 2009, my late husband went to pretty much cash and something very similar. So when he passed in 2013, I got the statement. We had missed all those years of growth of,
10, 11, and 12. It started coming back from the downturn, right? And so you missed out on that.
Yeah. And so here I never asked that follow-up question, right? So of course I sit now with Jim. I'm like, all right, Jim, this is the 401k that we have for the business. And this is how much you're putting in and I'm putting in. And this is where the target date fund might be. And this is the diversification we're taking. And what do you say, Jim?
You got it handled. I don't know. I just throw my hands up.
Well, let me ask a follow.
Total trust.
Let me ask a follow-up question to Jim on that then. So she's oversharing at this point, right? I guess if you kind of almost say, because she had an experience that kind of burned her, right? So she kind of feels like, hey, I want to make sure you're comfortable, and she's sharing this information, and it's not your bag. You trust her. You're not digging it. We see a lot of this in the financial world where one party is, kind of handling it and the other's like, I don't care, whatever. But I don't know that that's the best move. So how would you advise people feeling that way? Like now that you live and work and, interact with a financial advisor every day, is it something where you kind of have to start to learn that, okay, I need to start to pay attention to some of this, or what's your thoughts?
I absolutely think, I think I'd be really worried if someone was trying to hide the information.
Clearly.
I think it should be, forthcoming. It should be talked about. I just personally don't have any knowledge. So a lot of times it would be like me explaining to her if I'm building something.
Right.
And she can say it sounds great, but you're not really retaining exactly what's going on. But on just personal experience, I totally trust she's doing what she's doing. This is her gig. And she would know better than me.
I mean, you definitely have that leg up because she is a financial professional. But I think
Absolutely.
most of us, right? Like, I mean, I'm a host of a show, but I'm not an actual financial professional. I have a lot of knowledge because of what I do. But my wife, same way. She's like, well, I just trust you on it. And I'm like, well, no, but we're going to talk about this together, or we're going to see our advisor together, because I may not be explaining things to you properly. And Donna, I think that's where, again, families in transitions, that's why they come to you, especially if they are blended, if they've lost someone, because it's like, okay, here's what person A has, here's what person B has. How do we make this work? Like, how do we understand this whole thing in a 10,000 foot view? Is that fair?
Yeah, no, definitely fair. And definitely why the type of advice I give is a lot of it is education, right? Because I want to make sure if we have a blended family, just like Jim and myself, and that one person that does handle the finances or is more savvy with the finances in the house, if something happens to him or her, I want the other partner to know, one, they have me to lean on if they need to, right? Or also that they understand some of the basics, like why did we do this, right? Because that also builds the trust. So like, Jim, if I said there's a difference between traditional savings and Roth savings, would you know what I was talking about?
I would nod and say I did. But no, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. I ask a lot of times I ask questions, and sometimes I even say, I know this might be a stupid question because I don't know the difference on those simple things. And I do ask her a lot of questions just from my own knowledge, not even about my personal stuff. It's just in general.
Just the education of the terms.
Just the education. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And Donna, there's no such, I mean, financially, there's really no such thing as a dumb question because it's not what we do every day. So Donna, can you explain to us how to rewire, the house for if you want to change the voltage or the AC in the house there, if you want to go change currents?
100%. I cannot. And that's
right,
even
exactly.
when we talk about like if something goes wrong in the house, I'm like, Jim, you have to teach me like the electrical panel. We have a bigger house. There's more than one electrical panel. I was like, because if you're not here one day and I got to go into that creepy basement, I need to know, like, I want to be in and out very quickly. It is creepy. So teach me the basics so I can float until I can get a professional in. So
exactly. And I think that's exactly the point, right? So if you've been a stay-at-home mom, let's say because you lost someone to death or divorce, and you've been a stay-at-home mom for a while, and you've got these things, and now you're, maybe meeting someone and moving into a new relationship, you want to have these conversations about what do we each bring to the table so that we can, get on the same page so that, again, if it happens again, whether it's death or divorce, that you know where you're standing, at least roughly anyway.
100%. And Jim, like, I wasn't in your first marriage. No. But when you actually step back to raise your kids, and you guys had just moved into a new house, like, how did you address those financial conversations in your marriage?
I think with us, it was more of, we downsized our house. To be in a different school district, with the whole objective of me stepping back, and being that I was a carpenter, it was just it made most sense. My ex-wife worked for the government, so it made more sense. I had a job. I was in the carpenters union. I could leave and come back. I didn't lose my spot, and it just makes more sense for me to stay at home. So it was more of, I never looked at it as in like, some of the guys, especially, carpenters and stuff, they're like, I can't believe you're staying home. And I'm like, well, that just makes more sense for the family as a whole.
And I think you were protecting her ability to get promotions. You weren't trying to pull her out of the job market because she needed those step ups where you knew you could enter back in and make your daily wage.
That's a good point.
Always. It's to the point where I could make a phone call and start on Monday. You know what I mean? Like that's how fast you could just jump back in. to stay with it, or just do something on your own and do jobs around the neighborhood for people. So I had the ability to make money in and out or anywhere. If she had to relocate, I could relocate easily.
So the flexibility was there for you, which obviously made that, again, the family choice made more sense because her job required more structure, if you will.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the like financial changes to that? Like often if you're talking about a stay-at-home spouse, you know, it's pretty hard in today's economy, as we all know, to live off of a single income, right? So how did that shake out?
Well, I did, you know, Donna might have to cover her ears on this one, but of course I cashed out my annuity and took.
I didn't know we were going there. Donna knows about it,
and I just took the major tax hit, just to have a pool of money, cash available, and then. But I would also, the thing I did was, if there was ever anything we needed for the kids, if there was any type of vacation we were going to take, or something happened to the house, you know, a heater goes, something, I would literally pick up a job on the side for someone, redo their kitchen. Do something, and I would come up with that money for those emergency type things. But Donna cringes every time.
But hey, that's why we're bringing on. That's why we're bringing on this into the conversation. That's why we're doing it this way now. So Donna, I get to play like host or reaction. I feel like Phil Donahue or something. Like, what was your
Mark?
Yeah, what's your thought to when you hear something like that, and explain why to the listeners why maybe that wasn't the best idea from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to dig in. So when Jim talked about cashing out his annuity, it was his retirement benefit, pretty much like a pension from the Carpenters Union. Okay. And I always say, like, pensions are rare nowadays. Like, my mom and dad, they came from the generation where pensions really were what they were counting on to retire. And now you and I are having to save into a 401k and almost create our own pension. So the first cringe is the fact that he had access to a pension. Oh my gosh, that was going to grow and compound year after year and provide a stream of fixed income in retirement. And that was gone. So even though it really did help with short-term needs, the long-term coverage was gone. Now, you had an agreement, I assume, with your ex-wife that she would be contributing to her 401k and that you would have access to that when you moved to retirement.
Yes. I mean, that was
the understanding. We all know it didn't happen, but that's okay.
Yep.
But that was my other thing too, is when you go ahead and you cash out the annuity, you're taking an ordinary income hit on it. So it's going to be your ordinary income rate. And if you cash out the whole thing at once, you just bounced yourself into a really high income tax bracket. I'm not lecturing. I'm just saying it for listeners, babe. That's all. And so you're actually paying a higher tax. Like, even if you guys would have taken it out like a little bit by a little bit by a little bit and kept yourselves in a lower income bracket. Oh my goodness. And I think more than any
whole thing, let's do it,
puppy. But the thing is too, and this is the one thing that I think makes Jim and I work, right? It's like I say, like I overanalyze, I overshare with him, and sometimes it makes his head spin. He's like, shh, just stop, right? I know from knowing Jim before it was me and Jim, right? And I just knew Jim as the carpenter who was really helpful for families, right? You did it. You cashed out your annuity because that was the way you got to stay home. So you had 4 to 5 years of your kids not seeing the inside of a daycare, of you being there when they came out, of you being able to still bring in an income on side jobs. And so that is priceless. So you can't put a dollar sign on those years. But if we're looking at it on a math,
you could though.
I do.
You could though.
I absolutely do. I put a dollar sign on it because I call it the math of loss, and that is almost like, where are your goals? How are you going to get there? And can you afford to do this? In the end, it all worked out beautifully, and you did, and you got great kids. So okay. But we have to think about the finances and the numbers. Yeah. Different ways that could have happened and still had a benefit.
Donna, but what I hear in that too, though, you know, from this outside third party standpoint is, you know, he made the decision. Yes, there's those lovely ramifications that he was able to be there with the kids and so on and so forth. But I think maybe for people, and again, this is the change in the world of the last even 5-6 years, is having podcasts everywhere and YouTube videos and things. You can now hear these stories or hear things and go, well, maybe I'll pump the brakes before I cash out that annuity and just see what my options might be and still want to be able to do the best for my kids, right? Jim, not to say that you didn't, because clearly you did, right? But I think that's the great thing about these educational things now being a little bit more easily at our fingertips, is it gives us a chance to learn a little bit more options and then be armed with better information so that we can make a better decision on whatever front. Hey, at the end of the day, if you still needed to do it, you still needed to do it, and it came out just fine. But at least you were armed with it beforehand. Does that seem fair?
I definitely, like I said, definitely fair. I don't regret it. I don't. For me personally, I never envisioned myself retiring. My father still works, so he's just he always used to say the old saying, "I'm going to have to work till lunch on the day of my funeral."
Work till you drop.
Yeah. So in my mind, I was always going to be doing something. I never pictured that whole sitting around going fishing every day. It's not. I don't do that. In fact, when I'm bored, I work on the house. So it's like I enjoy doing stuff and changing things. So I think that's why it wasn't that big of a deal. I understand financially it's horrible and all of that, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But I personally enjoyed it. I don't even think about it. I joke about it.
The one good thing, when I met Jim and I actually first heard this story was like, oh, I wish you would have just reached, I wish I was a financial advisor back then. I wasn't. I wish I would have had that conversation with you, right? I wish I could have just helped you, just been like, ooh, I understand why you're doing it. Just check the income brackets before you pull the whole thing. Just a little bit of a tip like that could have been really helpful for your family to have more money to be able to support those kiddos. The idea worked for you guys, but how do we use it the best? And that's where we're getting that professional advice. And that's why I really try when I'm working with my families in transition to put podcasts out here or write a book or write a blog. So they have a tool to be like, oh, wait, maybe I should get financial guidance on it, whether it be for me, not Uncle Bobby at the Thanksgiving table, but whether it be another financial advisor or whether it be their banker or their insurance broker, something like that, to just ask that next question. I really try to be, open and welcoming to all sorts of my clients that they can ask that question. You said it earlier, no stupid question at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. Donna, we've talked through, while we've been doing the podcast, I've usually brought my brother up or something because he's put himself through some financial situations. I have friends that know what I do and they reach out to me and they ask me a question and I'm like, look, I'm not a financial advisor. I just play one on a podcast, right? I was like, but I have a lot of information, but here's resources to at least go try to find out, and get some more information to see what the best, choice may be for you. So that at least you're armed no matter what it is. Jim, it's like, you're a carpenter. So, sometimes you can make whatever work in order to kind of accomplish the thing that you're trying to do. But if you had the right tool, it would make it a whole lot easier. Right. And I'm sure you've been down that road many times where you're like, well, this hammer will get the job done, but I really needed a specific hammer to get it done correctly.
Absolutely correct. And a little fun side story is in the beginning, Donna actually took financial advice from me.
True. It is
interesting.
True. Yep.
Interesting.
So, when I was just a carpenter before we were Donna and Jim, when I was just a carpenter, she took financial advice from the worst person in the world to take it. Financial
and it's true. And it was the best advice ever. Can I share real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jim was actually a carpenter in my house. That's how we first met one another. Okay. And I was working part-time, it was 2 years after Greg passed, I think. It was a year and a half. So Jim has actually known me. Apparently, I met Jim a few months after my first husband passed, and I don't remember it. Sorry. It was a turbulent time. And he's like, no, we've met before. I'm like, we did? Oh, I kind of recall the tool belt. No.
Okay.
But no, he was watching me work full time, manage 3 kids. They were 9, 12, and 13 at the time. And I was studying for my CFP, just to actually take the coursework to see if this was the field I wanted to go back to. And I just couldn't I was exhausted. I remember him sitting there saying, why don't you just quit your job? You're just working part-time and go full into studying for your Series 7 and your 66 and your CFP and your life and health and just get it done, because then you'll be in the workforce sooner instead of dragging this out. And like me, I wait 24 hours. I thought about it. And I remember texting my carpenter being like, thanks for the advice. I just quit. Right? And what did your wife say at the time, Jim?
Nice.
I told my ex-wife, I said, Donna, I'm working at her house. Yeah. And I said, well, I told her to quit her job yesterday. She just told me she did. And she's like, what idiot would follow any financial advice from you? And
But it was
so that was
truly the
funny-
best thing I ever did. I got everything done in a year. I started mentoring so I could use the CFP designation and sit for the exam. So I was able to use my CFP within 2 years. And it's all because I put all of my energy into that one mission and was out and employed within 6 months. Like that was so much. So thank you for the financial advice, Jim Guillen.
If anyone else
and how
has
many years
questions,
ago?
I'll be happy to answer any financial questions.
There you go. There you go. And how many years ago was this?
It was 2014, 10 years
Okay.
ago.
So 10 years.
Correct?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I
14,
know,
15.
Bob. 10 years.
Time flies.
I knew you in your 30s.
Yeah, I was.
I
In
was.
your 30s. Oh, I miss my 30s. They were going a long time ago. Well, you know what? Oh, we'll wrap it up here this week. But I think there's some good conversation in here that you can kind of pull out. You know, if you're in a relationship where one of you is staying at home and the other one, maybe there's a financial disparity there. You know, just have the conversations, talk with each other so that you know what's going on and you're on the same page. I think that's probably the first place Donna would give advice on that, right? Is just make sure you guys are sharing stuff, whatever it might be. Even if the X's and O's, are not your thing, like they're not Jim's thing, you still want to make sure that you're, talking to one another so that you can kind of find the best solution out there for you guys. And of course, as always, if you need some help, that's why you can reach out to different people. There's, advisors and all different kinds of specialities. They have different niches. They just lots of different things you can do. But if you need some help, we're going to have some stuff pop up on the screen here for you so that you can reach out to Donna at Sefton Financial. But I think pretty good first launch here for, kind of off the cuff reaction style, bringing Jim in. Jim, thanks for hanging out, my friend.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mark. It was great meeting you.
Yeah, you as well. Look forward to having you on probably about once a month. We'll have Jim come in and give us his completely different take on things from a financial standpoint. And Donna, as always, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Jim. It was nice having you, Bob.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We might get some married friction along the way too. So you never know as we get this thing going. We'll see if they poke the hornet's nest. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that. Let's talk about that a minute. So
Donna never mentioned that.
yeah, exactly.
You can't shut us up. We talk constantly. So
We do talk constantly.
Well, we're going to find out. They're a little nervous today because we were just getting started on episode 1, or the first kind of version of this, but we'll get some more of these down the way. So thanks for hanging out here with us on the podcast, folks. As always, we appreciate your time. And don't forget to subscribe, and we'll have all that information popping up for you right now.
Registered representative offering securities through Cetera Financial Specialists LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Sefton Financial LLC and Cetera are not affiliated. Sefton Financial is located at 8200 Flowertown Avenue, Suite 4B in Windmore, Pennsylvania. Zip code 19038.